Hello guys. Welcome to Redditor's Revenge. Here we post amazing revenge stories daily. And if you want more content like this, please do subscribe to the channel and stay tuned with us. Moving to our today's first story. About how OP's mother exposed the entire HOA fraud scheme in their neighborhood and takes down the HOA from the inside. Now story. My neighborhood does not have a homeowners association, at least, not anymore. When my parents first moved in, my older sibling may be 2 years old and with me as a little glowworm. There was an HOA. They took money from the neighborhood in exchange for their services. At first, and for quite a while, my parents just kind of shrugged it off. The HOA shoveled the snow off the streets in winter and dealt with trash collection. So they were doing something worthwhile, right? No, the city controlled the snowplows and garbage trucks, not the HOA. But still, there was the illusion of effort. And besides, one summer they decided to contact a company to plant new trees all over the neighborhood. The fact that the company was owned by the son of the head of the HOA was coincidental. The trees were the beginning of the end for the HOA. Why? Well, my grandma on my dad's side was visiting when they came around to plant the trees. My grandma is a certified master gardener, and so she stared through the windows of our house as the guys planted the trees. Just dropped the saplings on the grass, still with their roots inside the bag they came in. No holes dug, no holes cut, just a bag sapling lying on the grass like a pathetic and sad stick. The saplings laid there all night. No one came back to do their job and plant them. My grandma mentioned offhand that those saplings were going to die unless they got in the soil. And something clicked in my mom's head. She was paying the HOA money. Actual money, every month. While both she and my dad worked, taking care of 2 very little kids, sending us to daycare and preschool and arranging babysitters and feeding us. And the homeowners association was just going to pull this half-assed bullshit instead of doing what she's paying them for. No ducking way. So she showed up at the head of the HOA's house and demanded that the trees get planted properly like she's paying for them too. The head of the HOA, so excited for someone caring about the neighborhood, made their second mistake. They asked if Mom wanted to join the HOA. She agreed. The trees were planted, but most didn't make it. My grandma was right. First things first, my mom showed up at the next HOA meeting. There were like 5 people there. No wonder they asked Mom to join. They desperately needed the people. So Mom looked at this collection of white people, herself included, who weren't even paying money to the HOA like the rest of the neighborhood. All the contractors the HOA called in were close relatives of other HOA members and weren't paid by the HOA. After all, their family. So my mom started digging. She spent pretty much a full summer taking down the HOA before she had to go back to teaching in the fall, with me carted along after her and my sibling old enough to be in school or daycare. She dug through the years of paperwork detailing the HOA's financial situation, and she found something extremely enlightening. The HOA didn't do anything. Well, they didn't do anything to benefit the community. Everything they claimed to do was either covered by the individual homeowner or by the city itself. So they were collecting money from all the neighborhood residents under false pretenses. And actually, they weren't even supposed to be in our neighborhood. Their association's zone was a whole different neighborhood. So what is a working mother of 2 small children to do while her husband is off at work and she's off for the summer? She goes door to door with pamphlets. Me and my sibling in a stroller as she weaves her way through the neighborhood blocks. Pamphlets explaining the situation and how to stop paying for services you'll never get. Pamphlets that are, of course, written in both English and Spanish to account for the high amount of Latino and Hispanic people in our neighborhood. And naturally, she got a lawyer and an accountant. It put a major dent in her pocket. But if it meant the entire neighborhood wasn't exploited for money each month, it was worth every penny. Another HOA member helped her sift through the documents and data and pass out pamphlets and encourage people to show up to the meetings, but had to back out because of work-related reasons. My mom rolled up to the courthouse flanked by the lawyer and accountant. Her kids safe at home with her husband, and had more than enough evidence to get the homeowners association the duck out of her neighborhood, expose the fraudsters for the frauds they were, and make sure that no HOA would ever push their luck in our neighborhood. It's been almost 19 years. And no one's even tried making another homeowners association in our neighborhood. Now, here is the end of our today's first story. I hope you enjoyed it, and let me know your opinion about this story in the comments section. I would love to read them. So before moving to the next story, please hit the like button and do subscribe to the channel to stay tuned with us for more awesome stories. Now, moving to our second story. About how OP's slumlord tried to evict them illegally from their apartment, but in the end, OP and her husband made them pay for every trouble they cause. Now story. This happened back in 2010 when I lived in Winter Garden, Florida with my husband and his dying uncle. Background. My husband and I moved in with his sick uncle after losing so much during the 2008 housing market crash in the US, like many of my husband's lawn maintenance customers. We also moved in with his uncle into a condo because his uncle had stage 4 cirrhosis of the liver. And his self-entitled sister and her family refused to help take of him. My husband is a retired Seminole County Sheriff's officer, important later. And I got ourselves set in the condo's 2 bedrooms as his uncle had himself set up in the living room, including his bed. On the first day, we found dangerous black mold caused by a leaky dishwasher. On the second day, we found the master shower had loose tiles and a leaky shower head. On the third day, we found a nest of brown recluse spiders in the living room. We talked with his uncle about these problems and found out that the slumlord, friends with self-entitled sister, aunt and her family, was refusing to take care of the issues as required by law. We wanted to start legal actions then, but my husband's uncle talked us out of it several times. The slumlord was nice to us so long as my husband's sick uncle was alive. The very next day after my husband's uncle died was a completely different story. Slumlord had turned nasty and aggressive and began to try and strong-arm to evict us like we were nothing more than drug addict squatters. Slumlord even bowed up and aggressively tried to fight my husband when we dropped off our next rent check. He kept telling us that we had to move or else, but yet refused to follow actual Florida laws to evict us. Slumlord and his corrupt Winter Garden PD code enforcement officer wife even recruit my husband's self-entitled aunt and uncle to start harassing him about just moving even if we had to live in a tent. Self-entitled aunt: why don't you and my RSO nephew just move so they can rent the condo to another senior? Husband: we don't have anywhere else to go yet, and he must go through eviction laws or get into very serious trouble. Self-entitled aunt: you're nothing but trouble. Retired SCSD officer nephew: you've been problems since the day you were born. Get out of their condo and stop being a problem for everyone. Who cares if you have to live in a tent? All of this made my retired SCSD officer husband, who specialized in uncovering corrupted law enforcement, very suspicious. We talked and began investigating slumlord and corrupt code enforcement wife. My first order was to place all rent into escrow with evidence of repairs that have been neglected. Second, I sent a notification of ceasing harassment to the slumlord and self-entitled aunt. Next, I researched public property tax records. Woohoo, pay dirt there. Slumlord's condo wasn't registered as a rental property with the state of Florida and was paying far less in property taxes than slumlord should have been paying. Property tax records also showed that slumlord did not own the condo. It was still deeded to his mother, who I found out had been living in a retirement home for 5 years before my husband's uncle moved in. My husband found out that corrupt code enforcement wife had been inspecting and signing off on her and slumlord's properties, including the condo, which is against FL code enforcement conduct laws. I found out from neighbors in the condo that slumlord had only been renting to seniors with severe health issues. My best discovery, though, next to tax evasion, was finding out that the Condo Owners Association had a very strict no renting and leasing policy, meaning you or your family had to live in the condo and couldn't be rented. The revenge. Now that we had all of our evidence, my husband and I began to knock down all of the slumlord's dominoes. My husband went and filed a complaint with the Winter Garden Police Department about corrupt code enforcement wife and her perjuring inspections on her family properties. My husband has a glowing record in Seminole County and with the FDLE for having over 200 clean arrests and taking down nearly 60 corrupt public officials, including Child Protective Services, in the early 2000s. This background helped push WGPD to open an investigation into corrupt code enforcement wife. They discovered that not only had she perjured inspections on her family's properties, but also on my husband's self-entitled aunt and uncle's property as well. This got corrupt code enforcement wife fired, stripped of her state enforcement officer's license, and convicted of multiple crimes. I sent all property tax fraud evidence to the FL's Property Tax Division. That got the state to investigate slumlord. The state found that not only did he commit property tax fraud on the condo, but also on a property that he was renting to his son and self-entitled aunt's son, along with business tax fraud and income tax fraud. Both slumlord's son and self-entitled aunt's son were also busted for possession of illegal narcotics with intent to sell when investigators came to the rental house they lived. I never expected that much fraud to be found from all of this, but I'm glad it happened. The business tax fraud of slumlord affected self-entitled aunt and self-entitled uncle as well, since they were his business partners. Self-entitled uncle then came under investigation by the USPS board as he was the postmaster of Winter Garden. Self-entitled uncle lost his comfy job and pension after it was discovered how he was assisting slumlord in the tax fraud scam and stealing money orders. All four were convicted of multiple white-collar crimes, had to sell their properties and most of their stuff, serve some form of time, and pay huge amounts of fines and restitution. Slumlord, his wife, hubby's self-entitled aunt, and hubby's self-entitled uncle along with their sons all went down for multiple crimes, both felonies and misdemeanors, all because they thought they could strong-arm evict us. Just proves how smart we tenants can be when pushed. Also proves why everyone should know all rental laws and how to research public records, because it can save you in the end. Now, here is the end of our second story. I hope you enjoyed it, and let me know if you had any bad experience with scummy landlord, or you can also share your opinion about them in the comments section. Now, moving to our final story, about how I put my first job out of business after 8 years of working there. Now story. Okay. So I live in a relatively small city in North Carolina and started working at the young age of 14 as a dishwasher. Soon working my way up through the restaurant over 2 years. Settle in because this is a long one and I hope you all enjoy it. The original owner of the restaurant, bar, a 50-year-old woman, had grown interested in selling the restaurant. After 10 years of great reviews, and honestly it became the best place in town to go to. A younger male walked in one day through the kitchen door. In the start I thought he was a new employee. Found out later that night he was the one interested in buying the restaurant. And the sale went smoothly. Fast forward a year. And the new owner, let's call him Herb, denied the only time I had ever asked for a raise. The $7.50 an hour I started on was not a living wage. He told me I didn't work hard enough, when I had gone as far as to wait on tables and cook, as well as many of the cleanup and maintenance, on top of my job of being their dishwasher. Thankfully for me at the time, my manager, who had listened through the office door, called him out on the bullshit. She got me my raise. Nonetheless, a few months into it, Herb let several coolers which held meat break down and refused to fix them or get a new one. My nice manager couldn't take getting the backlash of always being blamed for things breaking down. Herb's the owner. It was his money. He had to approve anything we did. So on the night we celebrated her 10th anniversary of working there, she ate the cake my sister and I made her, then also proceeded to quit on the spot right after. The responsibility of management fell onto my sister, and she was forced to take the promotion with no raise or anything. She managed for 9 months, only to feel unheard for any issue she brought up with equipment or workers. She would always be told, no, we cannot do that, and after she had had enough of trying to convince him on repairs, we were left without a manager for some time, and he was forced to drive the 3 hours to come and manage the restaurant himself. A few weeks after, a new manager was hired, and another man was hired to be my help in the kitchen, and me being the head cook at this point, I taught him the ups and downs of the kitchen. And this man, he was kind and caring at first, but he kissed ass so much that I was overlooked for the kitchen manager position. The guy I loved to watch football in the kitchen on my phone, using my speaker on the slow Sundays, changed into a brutal asshat. He would cuss at the waitresses and try to physically fight me daily. He and I were there to open the kitchen alone and would be joined by waitstaff an hour later. He went as far as to buck up to try to fight one of the waitresses one day when she mentioned that she had heard everything he said to me before she walked in. I am done with your shit. You can either apologize or you can get the duck out. OP has been here a lot longer than you, and you were trained by him, and yet you think you can disrespect him? Hell no. As the man raised his hand to try to smack her, I punched him in his face and, in return, got slammed into the already broken coolers. You do not hit a woman, ever. Fast forward a few months later, and after everyone sees this side of him, they realize I wasn't playing about him being a great a duck. Many of us had tried to tell Herb about his actions, but were met with, it can't be that bad, he's so nice. Finally, after not being heard or listened to for so long, I began planning how to quit. I had it all planned out, and when we had the meeting, I walked in a suit, already having found a place with At that time, my fiancé and a new job far from home. Everyone knew I was overdressed and had questions. And I filled them in on the walkout plan, yet the mean manager was nowhere in sight. After enjoying the meeting and being called on for my opinions on how to boost sales and better the restaurant, I looked at Herb and answered sarcastically, "Oh me, now you want to hear what I have to say." Getting in a serious tone now, I stand up and told him why would I help a business, much less the owner of this business, better themselves when I have been blown off for months. Anything I had to tell you. I was bullied for months, and when I mentioned it, I was brushed off. Have a great ducking day, Herb, because you quite literally don't have a cook now. Today is moving day, and I'm moving over 4 hours away to a better job, one with an owner who will listen and respect their workers, and not force us to try and cook green, slimy chicken past its expiration date. I quit. He begged for me to stay because he had finally fired the mean manager. He said, "Is there any possible way I can get you to stay?" I looked at him and repeated the words he always told us when we mentioned equipment needed to be repaired or replaced. In his exact customer support accent, "No, we can't do that." As I walked out, he followed, begging me to stay, and said he finally did what was needed of him. I simply told him too little, way too late, and proceeded to walk out, and what followed was all the coworkers on my side stood up and left too. This is not where it ends. He had purposefully not given me my W-2 forms for taxes, and after a few days of harassing him for my tax papers, I got them. Then, I received a letter from the IRS saying there was a problem with my tax forms. Therefore, I couldn't receive my tax refund. Calling up the IRS, I found he had not submitted any of the forms he was supposed to as our employer. And when contacting him to rectify the situation, he proceeded to say don't recall employing any of you this year. After all, you all left with no reason or rights. Little did he know I record every conversation on my phone. And I reported him to the IRS. Attached to the email, I sent in the voice recording in an MP3 format, and I also sent in photocopies of my check stubs and copies of my W-2s, along with informing my coworkers having issues with their taxes to do the same. Herb has since lost his business and his business license. His wife left him and took their kids after finding out about his fraud. Herb is facing upwards to 16 years in prison now for multiple counts of tax fraud. It turns out we were not the only business he owned and refused to pay taxes or file the correct tax forms when needed. He had withheld the safety precaution pay during COVID and used all of it to fix the restaurant. He ducked up, and I get to sit back happily typing this with a smile, knowing this duckhead got what was coming to him. For all of you wondering whether I ever got my taxes and my money, yes, I finally did as of yesterday. Here is the end of today's video. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you liked it, please don't forget to hit the like button and comment below. If you don't want to miss any videos, please do subscribe to the channel.